Welcome into Man vs. Machine, where we bring Ed Feng, find him on Twitter at the Power Rank, and put his statistical model up against the odds makers. He picks 3 college football games. He's been pretty much a 2-1 machine. 2 weeks ago, he did go 1-2, but besides that, been pretty much making money week in, week out this college football season. Let's bring him in now. Ed Feng, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Drew Martin. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Excited to talk some of these games. You got some big ones, especially the latter two. I'm really excited. But let's start off with the first one. Duke Army. Interesting style of stylistic matchup here. 141, 142 on the rotation number. Looks like Duke's laying 2.5 at 5 dimes, -3 at Bet Online. Total of 48, pretty much across the board on SBR odds. If you like the under, you can find a 48.5 at Heritage. How you looking to bet this one?
Yeah, so this Duke game really jumped out at me at the beginning of the week because Duke was only laying 1 point. And I think this is a mismatch in class. Duke is not exactly a strong Power 5 conference team, but I do think they're somewhere between the 40th and 50th best team. I know their offense struggled a little bit recently. Army is a team that had a great season last year and finally beat Navy in the Army-Navy game. But, a team that on their best year is going to be about FBS average. So the side really stuck out to me at first in the earlier part of this week. That was what I was going to talk about today. But then it jumped up to 3, which I think is a pretty appropriate number. Duke should be laying about 3 on the road at Army. But I want to talk about the total in this game because I like over the 48. Army's a lot of what drove Army's success last year was the defense. They got a lot better. They have really fallen off this year. I evaluate defenses by adjusted yards per play, and they rank 124th this season. They've had a couple injuries in the secondary that I think have really hurt them. And one of the reasons I think this total is so low is because of what happened last week. They had a phenomenal game against Air Force. They actually shut out Air Force, which is a pretty explosive offense. I think it's a fluke. Army hasn't been that good this week. Army was playing against a triple option team, so something that they see a lot in practice. I think Duke brings something different. I mean, Duke's offense has not been good this year, but they're not running the triple option. It's not something that Army sees in practice. I think both sides I see some pretty even matchups. I think both offenses are going to be able to score some points. I think this goes over the 48. We also see a game with a pretty tight spread, so you also have the chance of overtime in case you need that to push the total over the 48.
And on to the 8 o'clock slate. You got a huge game here in the Big 12. TCU versus Oklahoma, 159, 160 the rotation numbers. Looks like the Sooners laying 6.5, pretty much across the board right now. So under the touchdown for them, 62 the total at 5 dimes, 62.5 pretty much everywhere else. Are you looking to bet this one from a side or totals perspective, Ed?
Yeah, totals perspective on this one. I really like Oklahoma's offense. I mean, who could not like Oklahoma's offense? I mean, we saw what they did in Bedlam last week. Oklahoma State's defense had really looked good by the numbers so far this season. I think they were top 10 by my adjusted yards per play when I'm looking at data from the current season. They had been really good, and Oklahoma just went in there and shredded them. I have a lot of respect for what TCU does on the defensive side of the ball. Gary Patterson knows what he's doing. But this is really just the tip of the cap to what Oklahoma has done. Baker Mayfield has been unbelievable. That offensive line is veteran. They got just a lot of weapons on that side of the field. Another reason I really like the over in this game is because Oklahoma has some nagging injuries on defense. Cornerback Jordan Thomas was really kind of a cornerstone of this defense. He hasn't been particularly good this year, and now is listed at questionable for this game. You could describe him as toast in that last game against Oklahoma State. So I think a lot of reasons to point to the over in this game. I also like to say I actually definitely lean the over in Oklahoma State last week. When you have an explosive offense like Oklahoma, I think and a defense that has struggled compared to expectations this year, you definitely want to think towards the over. Only reason I didn't pull the trigger last week was because of Mason Rudolph's foot injury. That's the Oklahoma State quarterback. But I think the over, I'm back to getting the over this week. And that's what I like in this game.
And Ed, we got a late night cap here in the Mountain West, 217, 218, the rotation number. Boise versus Colorado State. This total opens 55. Total pushed up to as high as 57.5 right now at SBR odds. Looks like Boise laying 6 pretty much across the board. How you looking to bet this nightcap Saturday night?
Hey, you guys know me. If you've been watching this show, I think of Colorado State as an over team. Nick Stevens and that offense has been explosive. The defense has struggled. I laid off these guys last week against Wyoming. Wyoming has had a sudden surge in their defense, and their offense is kind of fallen off a cliff this year. But I've liked Colorado State a lot. If you watch the show, we've talked about a lot of Colorado State games. I can't remember how many of them that we've done over the course of the season. But I think this is a good matchup for the over, especially at a number in the 56, 57 range. Boise State's defense has been good, but I think with Colorado State at home, they're going to be able to score some points. And Boise State's offense is also pretty good. I mean, I like Rippon as the quarterback, and especially against a defense that struggles as much as Colorado State's, I think they're going to be able to put up some points. So I like the over in this game.
All right, so on 217 over, we can give you 57 at Bet Online right now on the SBR odds screen. That's the over in the Boise State Colorado State game. Make sure to check out Ed Feng on Twitter. Great follow at The Power Rank. Also, sign up for his newsletter at thepowerrank.com. Great information there coming out Friday at noon each and every week. Ed, I want to ask you a couple questions about the games you chose. One, Colorado State, the Golden Goose. Do you always find yourself year in, year out tailing the same teams, either overwise or underwise or sidewise? Like year in, year out, do you find yourself betting the same teams over and over?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Colorado State's been a great example. I think this is an over team just with how explosive that offense is in the context of the Mountain West and just how much that defense has struggled. I would have expected the markets to have caught up with that right now. I'm sure there's a good reason why they haven't that maybe I'm missing, but yeah, I think you can catch on to these teams. I think it's more likely in some of these smaller conferences. I think Hawaii is another example of a team that we've been on the over a lot. Just a defense that's struggled and an offense that's really done pretty well under quarterback Drew Brown. They have some offensive line issues of recent over the past month. I think their offensive line coach quit, which puts a little bit of more concern about the over in some of these games. But yeah, I mean, I think you definitely find some teams that you like to ride on one side of a total. I think some years there's going to be a lot of teams that you really like the under, where you have a strong defense and a true freshman quarterback that can't play. I think you're going to find those teams as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one other question I had for you in the Duke Army game, you mentioned like it's line 2.5 or 3, depending where you shop. And you brought up a point. It's a competitively lined game. So the competitive matchup, a higher percentage of overtime games, obviously with two competitive teams. Do you factor that into your numbers?
I do not. I kind of one of those things that I make subjective adjustments on at the end. It's just something, I think there's always a series of things that push you one way or the other in a game, whether those be injuries or situations or things like that. I think a game that is close like that is just something that will push you to the over, just because you have a higher chance of going into overtime, getting a bunch of extra points. I think if you like the over in a game that there's a pretty big favorite, then maybe you want to bet the first half, because then you don't have any of those issues about. That's a game that's unlikely to go into overtime. That's a game which is very likely to slow down in the second half because one team is likely to be up pretty big and start running the ball, running out the clock. So that might be a game you want to think about the first half on the total.
No, that makes sense. And also coming into college basketball season, I noticed last year a lot of teams, mainly in competitively priced games, it's almost like they would play for overtime. Their last couple possessions, they wouldn't really go up and down as much. Mm-hmm. And there was more of a percentage of overtime games when that happens. So I think it's an interesting question going into college basketball season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ed, what about a question with the college football playoff rankings just coming out this week? Do you have any opposition to it, or what caught your eye with those?
I think it's just about right. I ran some numbers about the probability of teams to make it. And the thing that kind of struck out about me, the thing that stuck out to me is that my numbers aren't giving Alabama as much of a chance as everyone else. I think it's an interesting team. I mean, I don't think anyone disputes that they're the top team in the nation. But when you look at their road, if Auburn wins this game against Georgia and then is able to knock off Alabama, Auburn wins the SEC West, and Alabama sitting home with one loss. And with their strength of schedule is really kind of interesting because the SEC is down. Alabama played Florida State to open the season. That win doesn't look as good as it did because Florida State has struggled this year. Tennessee has fallen off a cliff. Their other cross-division game, and Vandy doesn't look good at this point. LSU is disappointed a little bit with Coach O at the helm. So I'd be interested to see what the committee does with Alabama should that be the case. Now it's unlikely. I mean, they should go into Jordan-Hare and win. I do expect them to go in, but my numbers are just a little bit more down than some of the other systems that I look at for them to both make the playoff and win it.
Yeah, and you bring up Alabama. I think what they're favorites to actually win the national championship over the field, like we were talking about. I think I saw the number -130 at 5 dimes as far as their price to win the national championship. And also thinking about that, one, what are your thoughts on that? And also bringing up the fact that an SEC team is likely not to get 2 teams, right? Because especially if Notre Dame goes in, then that's an independent going in. You wouldn't want to leave that many other conferences out of it. Would you factor that in as well?
Yeah, I mean, those are the things that are really hard to model with this committee. I mean, this is a group of human beings, and yeah, we've seen them for 3 years, but the composition of the committee changes. When I put out a number there for, what the probability is for someone to make the college football playoff, what the probability is that someone's going to win it, there's a huge amount of error just because we're trying to model the behavior of humans. As far as Alabama being greater than 50% to win the college football playoff, I think that's crazy. I have obviously a ton of respect for this program, but so much can go wrong between now and the end of the season. They do have to play Auburn. They do have to play Georgia. I think, and then you talked about the SEC. I mean, I think if Alabama and Georgia are undefeated heading into that championship weekend, I think there's a great chance that both of those teams could make it. I think Notre Dame still has a lot to prove. They got a big test at Miami this weekend. They still have to go to Stanford, so 2 tough road games. I'm not slotting Notre Dame in there by any stretch of the imagination, and yeah, we'll see how it all shakes down. I mean, I think it's going to be exciting. And one of the other things that I've been telling people is that we haven't seen a lot of upsets in the conference championship games. So for the most part, the favorites have won over the last 3 years, which have made it, kind of boring heading into that last weekend. That's not always going to happen. I mean, these underdogs have about a 30% chance to knock off that favorite 25, 30, even if it's 15. It's going to happen at some point. So then we'll see how the committee deals with that, how it would deal with like the number 2 team in the nation losing in a conference championship game. Are they automatically out? Does the committee consider, the body of work, or does it have a recency bias? We don't know the answer to these things. And that makes it hard for someone who tries to model behavior like I do.
Yeah, no, that's interesting stuff. I can't wait for as it gets closer. That's what makes this sport so great. College football coming down to the end, some underdogs winning outright and causing chaos into the end. But he's Ed Feng, obviously one of the smartest guys in the business. Follow him on Twitter @thepowerrank. Thanks, Ed, for joining us, and best of luck this week in your college football betting.
Yeah, thanks to you, Drew. Good luck to you too, and looking forward already to next week.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.